if you see the 3 as, I just want to be seen and I just want you to see me, and I am terrified of the rejection that might occur, or the not being seen that might, for me it's rejection, but the not being seen that might occur, it's like don't do that. If you got a 3 who's actually handing themselves over to you a little bit, like, try to be open to them. I think many people, because they're not in touch with the heart space, even when I am like, okay, I'm putting down the barriers and you're seeing me, if they're not there with me there, it's like, ow, this was the exact thing I was afraid of.
Welcome to another episode of What It's Like to Be You, a show where I interview people about their experience as their Enneagram type. I am Josh Levine, your host. Today, I am speaking with my friend Gray Cietek. Gray's typing is really close to mine. She's a social self-pres 3 with a 4-wing, 3-6-8 trifix. And just for comparison, mine is social self-pres, also 3 with a 4-wing, 3-9-6 trifix. This conversation happened a while ago on the heels of a weekend where Gray and I actually got to meet each other in person. And so it was really interesting to explore our mutual reading each other, as social 3s tend to be reading each other. And actually the word we use in this conversation is tracking other people, what that's like, tracking the vibe of a conversation, tracking where people are at emotionally. And we also explore something that was really precious to me, which is what the social 3 ultimately is really wanting, and probably social 3 with a 4-wing more specifically, but a quality of social intimacy that is really yummy in the heart center. And Gray and I both kind of vibed on this point that there's something going on in the heart center at a pre-verbal level, that when people are locked in with each other in a particular way of relating, then it's just a kind of saturation with meaning and connectedness that is kind of rare. And so we talk about that. We talk about the grief that we're not saturated with that experience all the time. And Gray also has a really beautiful point about what she calls like the purpose of 3, and maybe the purpose of social 3 particularly, which is seeing people accurately. This was a really wonderful conversation for me from the point of view of just dropping into the heart center and not, I think, contradicting the stereotype of social 3 as being, prestige seeking, social climbing, having lots of polish and things like that, which can be true and which I've certainly experienced in my life. But getting under the hood of 3 and what it really means to, what happens when 3s really connect to their hearts and what they're really yearning for. So, please welcome my friend Gray. Welcome everyone to another interview, and let's just get into this. So I'm here with my new friend Gray Cietek from a YouTube channel called Augmented Personality, which she runs. And how long have you been running that?
I want to say about a year and a half.
Right. And it started mostly focused with OPS, right?
Yeah. Objective personality, MBTI. There's a little bit of Enneagram there, but if you watch those videos, don't judge me too much. They are not up to date. I am working on that.
All right. So Gray is an Enneagram 3, and the full typing structure through the 4-wing, social self-pres 3-6-8. And so we're going to get into what it's like to be Gray. And I'm so excited for you to be here. And also, it was really fun to meet you in person actually last weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's fun to know you a little bit now before we actually do this conversation. So first, how are you feeling right this second?
Oh, the instant jitters of there's a camera. Even we got started a little bit before, and it's like the instant I was like, and I'm here and I'm on. I was like, God damn, it's so frustrating because I do want to be real and I want that, but that doesn't mean that my brain agrees with me that that's safe. And so it's very funny how quickly the hard wiring takes over. But I'm still really good underneath that, which is great. That's the goal, right? To be good underneath.
I loved that statement that your brain doesn't necessarily agree that it's safe. And we talked right before the camera was on how, because we're both 3s, we're both going to change when the camera goes on.
Right.
And it's kind of happening. Do you
Nope.
agree? Yeah.
Instantly,
Wh-
instantly. We're also both social, so there's also a sense I feel like we're gonna talk in a meta. I have a feeling that we're gonna meta talk a lot during this interview of like, oh, look at this thing we're doing. Oh, look at this. Almost like we're watching little toys of ourselves from above. And it's like, look at
Yeah.
this, look at this, look at us do that. If I move it this way, it does this. And it just very um over analytical of self because the constant image painting of three is it's image but it's adaptive, so we're constantly trying to like, oh, look, when you do this and then I do this and like look at us adapt. It'll be this very that image painting is compulsive and it's almost unintentional how much I'm doing it, and I suspect you might feel the same, and as a result there's that never ending like tweaking and adjusting and meta analyzing and just all that yummy, delicious, crazy social stuff.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I find about that particular, especially when I am speaking with someone who knows the Enneagram or is interested in personality in general, is that it feels like a form of safety or image relaxation in a sense to talk about the way that I'm showing up and the way that you are showing up, and to
Yeah.
the conversation about the conversation is a place that I feel comfortable, and also it feels like in a certain way is a, how do I put this? It's a different form of intimacy to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Could be, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I
Yeah.
that way, yeah, I find that really to be true because if someone knows I'm an image type,
Mhm.
or just that I have like an objective personality. I'm a decider, which means I'm anxious about shame. And so it's shame and judgment and people. And so knowing that those two pieces exist in both systems, I'm always kind of sensitive to what are they seeing? Are they seeing me? Am I being seen? What's going on? Is this right? Is it wrong? Am I being seen correctly? All of that is going on. If someone knows and actually has it in mind when they're talking to me, I can kind of relax and be like, oh God, they know already. They already know. They already know I'm weird here. I'm already naked. Like I'm already exposed, so I might as well give up the ghost. And I really like that ability to kind of it's still hard. It's like I'm still presenting something, but I know that they're seeing past it at least a little bit, which is I would say a breath of fresh air, at least for me. It's like thank God. Like
Yeah. Well
someone
said.
needs to know what I'm like. Someone needs to know.
Yeah, I relate to that. And also, just to call something out, part of our conversation is probably going to be about, or we're going to touch on this as a general theme, is our typings are very similar, you and me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm social self pres like you, three with a four wing like you, and have 3 and 6 in my trifix. The only
right.
difference is that I'm 3 9 6 and you're 3 6 8. So the ordering
Yes, yeah,
is different, and you have 8 instead of 9. So
yeah,
um, let's see. We're talking a lot about image, and that's a really important theme. Let's see where I want to go actually first. Let's kind of pull back out, and I would love for you to just share what your Enneagram origin story is, and
yeah.
you can
Okay.
take us through even the whole thing with OPS too. I mean, I'm curious how
Yeah.
you landed on the Enneagram from the angle of other typing systems too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, I've been interested in personality pretty much forever. Um, like to the point where I was combing through my mother's psych textbooks when I was like in middle school, from when she had been in college, because I was just kind of compelled to understand what was going on with the humans. Which makes them sound like I see myself as something other than human, which is true and not true in a sense, because I there's me, and but I also know there's the image of me that is separate, and I'm trying to live up to that image, which isn't very human and it's very perfect. So um, it's a very so I'm just kind of catching my own language as I'm talking, which is a big part of a practice I've learned from all the years of first MBTI and seeing like, oh, how am I doing this in this exact moment? And then in objective personality in particular, there's the belief that you're doing your type every 5 seconds. And so if you can catch just a few moments of what you're doing, you can actually begin to see how you are creating your own nightmares over and over and over again, which from there, actually, because objective personality has that belief, that kind of like that kind of got me started walking up the mountain. And then once I saw that the Enneagrammer interpretation of Enneagram was the exact same principle, that you're doing your type structure compulsively to create your own nightmares, I was like, oh, okay, yes. And then there was something about Enneagram really striking at the heart of that there's an essence quality that I want, not just a function of personality that I want, which is the objective personality lens that I'm, for an idea, I'm an ENTJ. And so I'm craving a feeling thing that I feel as though I cannot have, but I'm existing in a state of doing things for others. It sounds very three-ish, but the true thing that I want, greater than just simply my own feelings and emotional experience, is in particular that which is valuable. And the lens of which I'm doing it through is social, which is that which is valuable for all. And that is like the fact that I believe in and part like in the split sort of sense that one, that I am somehow in contact with that which is valuable for all. And also, this is where it gets self-destructive, that I'm the only one who can see it, and that no one else is seeing how truly amazing this is, and therefore I have to bring it. I have to be the bearer of this burden, to tell and be the emblem of that. Is like, oh, that's a lot to put on my own psyche. That's a lot of expectation to put on myself, because I will fail in being a perfect emblem of value. Well, fuck. Like that's pretty much been that. And so that's been over. I got into objective personality about, I want to say, 2 years ago. And I really did a deep dive, and then I've been compulsively, as soon as I found Enneagrammer this year, like compulsively digging through the podcast. I've watched every single one of the Dark Arts Academy videos. I've read John's book cover to cover. And I go through over and over again, especially for the diagrams, on like just over and over compulsively. Like it's been really intense, because that feeling of I'm trying to be an emblem that I will never succeed in being, and the first the heartbreak of that, and then realizing that then I get to be human and I get to live my life without that burden anymore, if I can catch a few, if I can catch that every 5 seconds trying to be the emblem, and I can give myself a break if I notice it. It's like, oh my God, what a fucking relief.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah, yeah,
There's a few things that I want to just pull out of what you're saying, and then I have a
yeah,
question. So, I love this point that your type is you're doing your type every 5 seconds, or whatever the framing
yeah,
is. It's
yeah,
like, this is something that I think is not well enough understood in the Enneagram world at large, and I agree is something
yeah,
that the Enneagrammer universe
yeah,
is bringing to the Enneagram world in a very real, tangible, grounded, like, look, you're doing that thing right now kind of way.
right.
And
And again,
your
and again, and again.
that's
Yeah,
right. So your type is spilling out of you in unconscious ways that, well, definitionally, because they're unconscious, you don't have conscious control over them. And
right,
so,
right.
so I love that point. And the other thing is, I'm really struck by your use of the word compulsion in
Yeah,
this. Like, there's an obsessive quality that you have with this stuff, and
yeah,
the and also a sense of responsibility, it seems, for learning this stuff, for being not just, as you say, an emblem of value, which that's an interesting term to unpack in itself. But um, I'm going to pull out. So, like, in your YouTube video, the homepage video, you talk about feeling a responsibility to bring this
yeah,
knowledge to the world, that
yeah.
personality exists, that it. And actually, I'd love to just turn the mic back over. Like, can you talk about where does the compulsion come from for you? Why is it so important to you
Yeah.
to learn this stuff? And does that word responsibility still land for you?
Um, responsibility is like, I wouldn't have grabbed it for myself, but hearing it, it was like um a soft touch of yes. Like it wasn't like an intense, like this is the exact right word, but I was
Mm-hmm.
like, but it's not in the wrong ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, in many ways, the word I somewhat relate to is burden.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's your six fix.
because yeah, but it's burden not in a negative sense, but like the load must be like the whole point is like to know this and to not share it would that's the burden, to know and to not share 24/7 at all times with everybody, that
Mhm.
I found this jewel, that it's yeah. So I guess like why is it a jewel is probably the more important question, which is to know your own mind and to actually then have agency to choose if you want to believe the lies that your own brain tells you compulsively in order to keep you alive. It's like, listen, for many of the people that are watching this, you're safe. You're in a house. You probably have friends. If you don't, I'm sorry. And you're probably far more attractive than people used to be, like hundreds of years ago, when there was no food anywhere and everyone had illness scars covering them, right? Like humans, if you like comparatively to historical times, humans are beautiful, we are lush with connections, and we have so many resources. And to
Mhm.
know that your brain is lying to you and saying that you're starved of one particular resource and that you're completely denying the significance of another is, and that then you're fueling incredibly anxious, neurotic, self-destructive tendencies by that compulsion to keep up some instinctual drive, is like, you could be free of that. You could be
Mhm.
free for just one moment. If imagine just one moment of not feeling like you have to do it. And of course, the fact that I feel like I have to share that is social. So
Yeah.
it's like I feel like I'm not lost in that. Like the when I made that video, I completely was registering the irony of everything that I'm saying. The fact that I'm saying that you can be free and that we can all be light and in the air and not grounded by anything, and we could just play and be ourselves. It's like, okay, that's all still social, and an objective personality, that's still the job of the EJ, is to be the person who speaks for the tribe and says we can all be free to be our own unique identities, because
Mhm.
that's who the EJ doesn't feel free.
Yeah.
The
Partly,
social self-pres doesn't feel free to be themselves, you know?
I don't think it's a stretch for me to say this, and I'm curious how this lands
Okay.
for you. But this is, when we were hanging out in person, also, this was coming through for me. Is for
Okay.
me, one of the, and actually, I want to frame this too by saying it's a little bit difficult to parse this out, given that your six fix is secondary. But
Oh yeah.
the whole concept of the three moving to six in the Enneagram is a really important one. And my experience of it and my understanding of it, or one way that it's often framed, is the idea that the three in the average states is sort of spotlight seeking, whether overtly or subtly or
Right.
secretively, and is somewhat narcissistically self involved and wanting to be
Right.
valuable for its own sake. Kind of, it's about me. And, um, whatever, want to be successful, crush my goals, like fulfill my potential, all that stuff.
Right.
And that is its own thing. And then the three moving to six is basically um, sometimes characterized as a way of the three waking up to realize that, oh, actually, I want to contribute to like a team or a larger context or something
Right.
like that.
Right.
And the way that I think of it is it's like a quality of a clarified and devoted heart to
Mm.
something. What and I'm using the word thing in a in a deep way, like
No, I no, I know
a
what you mean.
cause or a sense of purpose where like the fibers of my being align towards this something, and it feels
Right.
and it imbues my life with meaning.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the hungry ghost of can I get one more hit of validation and can I earn another
Mm.
however much money to put in my bank account for my
Am I
status and
pretty enough?
prestige.
Am I pretty
Yeah,
enough?
there you go.
Am I
Right.
pretty
It's
enough?
like
Yeah.
yeah. And so I hear a lot of notes like that in
Yeah.
your sense of devotion to this subject matter and the way
Yeah.
and its
Yeah.
service for the world. That's so I just wanted to
Yeah.
name that. Do you relate to that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like I feel like a of course I feel like I'm a high status knight, because of what else would I be? But I feel like a knight who has gone off and fought and is work, like I will fight tooth and nail for the things that I care about. And I do very much feel like I'm offering my sword up to a liege, of being like, I'm turning this over to you now. Like, you have my sword. So you can kill me with it, or you can tell me who to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that sense of like, I'm handing that. I want to be very careful because if anyone's not in the like, I'm not handing that over to like specific individuals in the Enneagram or universe. I'm handing that over to the Enneagram, which is like I am on the side. I love this. I watched a thing by wonderful chaotic human called CJ the X, and he had a breakdown of Kronk from Emperor's New Groove, but it turned down with the point of being on the side of art. The point
Uh-huh.
of being on the side of art is that maybe you're not in the spotlight. Maybe it wasn't you that created the thing that is valuable. Maybe it's not about you. But
Hmm.
because you're on the side of art, you will allow your ego to step down and serve art, the higher thing that is pure and actually worth fighting for. And
There
for
you
me,
go.
that's I feel very much, I think, possessed, compulsed by the Enneagram because it's like I can actually hand my sword over to this
Hmm.
and trust that if I that is a greater thing than me, and it
Yeah.
will I will be led astray, but it will not lead me astray, if that makes sense. Because people are flawed, but
Hmm.
that symbol is not inherent. Like it is just a symbol. It's what humans read into it is the imperfections. You know what? Like it can be tainted by that, but it by itself is pure
I
without
love
human touch. You
I
know?
love what you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
kind of
There's a lot of four in there too. A lot of
it,
four fear of taint.
it feels like honestly a kind of medicine for me to hear it articulated like that. It's very because I my heart aligns with it. I think probably as a 3 also, or just our
Yeah.
resonance
Well,
stacking.
and we
Yeah.
both love the Enneagram, so
Yeah,
of course we
that's
feel
true.
that way.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Can
yeah.
you is this feeling of like surrendering my sword to the higher authority of the Enneagram or art or whatever
Mhm.
else lives up there?
Mhm.
Is that a new feeling for you, or can you paint the contrast between that and what it used to be like for you in your life, or is there
Um,
was there before and after?
yeah, I don't know if there's a linear like a snap line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can point to like okay, so I remember when I was younger, my family so like I'm much more slowed down at the moment because I'm really trying to be very honest and very real, and I can use my high energy as kind of like this blustering shield of energy so you can't actually see me, so I'm deliberately slowing down to prevent that. But so as a result, when I was a kid, my family would get me shirts like A plus in talking and stuff like about how much I talked, and I was always chattering and I always wanted to be the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
um, to the point of where when I was a kid they called me David Koresh because I would get all the neighborhood kids surrounding me. It's like to have a 6-year old be compared to a cult leader is a little crazy, you know? And,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I was like. And then I remember at some point in high school, there was a whole Coney 2012 because he had the child soldiers thing. But the whole Coney 2012 movement was fucking corrupt. It was full of bullshit and it absolutely was not going, most of that money was not going to help those kids. And my high school had posters of it plastered everywhere. And one fell
Mm-hmm.
on the ground and I stepped on it. And a teacher who I actually ended up being quite good friends with after I freaking tore into him on about this, he told me to pick it up. And I just laid out about how absolutely ridiculous. I'm not going to pick up this corrupted bullshit off of the ground. It shouldn't even be here. If you want to actually help people, you should. I don't remember the names of the fundraisers at the time, but I had like 4 ready to go. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, so at some point, I went from that kid who was using her talking for herself to there was glimmers of it's not about me because it yeah, it would be great if everything was about me, but like I'd like to live in the real world. And also I don't really like when everything's about me because god it doesn't actually, if it stays all about me at some point, the it feels almost like with image you're painting on like a wine glass and like they're gonna see through you or it's gonna crack, like something's gonna be go wrong. And I don't want that. Like I just no, I don't want that. I would rather do the cracking myself and be a little risk the imperfection and show that that's like it's real, it's something
Mm-hmm.
real. And it doesn't help, well it doesn't help, but it adds on that 368 is lovingly referred to as triple real because of how 3 is not a, it's not either romanticizing its darkness or romanticizing its light, it's just kind of what is. And then 6 is tearing into things for the sake of the superego. It's trying to find what's real and what's true for the sake of what's good. And then 8 is tearing into things and tearing it all apart for the sake of autonomy and for the sake of you will not contain me. So there's a lot of just I'm not gonna hide. I'm not gonna lie. For a 3, it's very blunt force trauma is what I do to people. So
This that story of stepping on the poster
yeah,
and kind
it
of
wasn't
laying
even
into your
deliberate.
teacher.
It just happened.
Well, actually, that specifically, even you saying that, I mean, this is, I was going to point out kind of the 6/8 stem or
Yeah.
your, this is, okay. Also, I'm going to say this out loud for people who aren't that familiar with the Enneagram. So
Yes.
we're talking about, we're being really fluid with, and fluent with our referencing of the Enneagram here. So,
Yeah. Go study it more, people. Learn.
3, so 6 and 8 are what we call reactive types. And you also have a 4-wing, which is another
Yep.
reactive type. So what part of the lingo is that it could be said that you're triple reactive adjacent.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And
I'm willing to tear things down. Yes.
yeah.
Make a mess.
And that's really interesting to me from the point of view of you being a core 3, because 3 as an image type tends to be very aware of how it's coming across and the presentation, and especially as a social 3. And so
Right.
for me as a social 3 who's relatively close to your typing, but who has 9 in my trifix, the idea of just in a public way, like reflexively just laying into someone, certainly a teacher, when I was in high
Oh
school,
yeah.
I mean, that's a very foreign concept to me. And so
Oh yeah.
when you, I actually, I just would love for you to say a little more about what it's like for you to be a core 3 and to be so aware of your image,
Okay.
and also to be so, I've used the word like electric to describe you, or
Yeah.
you have a lot of um, verbiage that's part of your kind of social presentation, and
Yeah.
high energy and the wiggles and just all these kind, like
Yeah.
you're kind of a, yeah, you know what I mean, like you're kind of
Yeah.
a bubbly energy,
Yeah.
and that as a contrast to what we typically or stereotypically think of as through the foreign, which is a little bit more refined or aristocratic or
Right. Right.
self-controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that you brought up like cuz I love like like very sophisticated imagery, especially like when I
Mm-hmm.
made my original collages, like I had one of purely angels. Like I love that imagery, but um the actual experience of me, it feels much more like that. So that triple reactive, so 4, 6, 8, for those of you wondering, is a huge part of my type existence.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is I've like when I say well, I described that happening, and I was like 15 at the time. People are like, "You did what?" Like your reaction is like, "You did what?" It's like, and I couldn't control it. It
Mm-hmm.
seized me, and it
Right.
came out of me. At some point,
And
like I
that's
had,
that's the reactive, just to name
yeah,
it. That's what it means to be a reactive type, is that it's like it just came over me, the
yeah,
reaction
I
spilled out of me.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember I was hearing there was like another example on the podcast. I had to like pull over and breathe. I was so angry. Someone like laid into Emeka and called him a narcissist over something. And
Mm-hmm.
like you can say that any assertive type has narcissistic qualities, sure, whatever. But like what he was taught, he'd gotten really vulnerable. And oh my God, I'm angry right now. Like it disgusted me, and I wanted to like find this person and just like tell them on a visceral level how like they will never be what he is. They will never be so valuable. And the fact that
Whoa.
they cannot see where they
Uh-huh.
are at, and that they had the audacity to speak in such a way to that which is to someone who is trying to serve value is like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to stop existing in anywhere where I can see you. Like like it's bad. It's really intense. And I've just had to accept it. I've had to just incorporate that into my image, because what the hell else am I supposed to do? I can't not like I've just that's like why with my collages that of angels, and they were carrying swords and of
Mm-hmm.
violence. It's like I just had to start from a place of I am aggressive, I am a bulldozer, because if I tried to have like very soft and contained image and then that came out of me, I would break so often it wouldn't work. Like it just said there's the three, it wouldn't work. As if working is all that matters when it comes to your image, right? Just you got to be confident. But yeah, it's very funny how I've had to just pull it in and be like, okay, how can I romanticize my own experience of that reactivity? Because otherwise, like there are plenty of I'm talking about the good times, right? The things where it's been useful, but there are
Mm-hmm.
plenty of times that I just have that compulsion come up over me over something that really isn't that significant or is so personal to me that I'm destroying it for anyone who might enjoy it or just generally being an asshole. And those are all things that happen too. So it's not always pretty, but I can romanticize it, which then I gives me permission to do it, if that makes sense. It
Yeah.
needs to be romanticizable to exist. So,
It needs to be romanticizable to exist.
yeah, that's a good phrase, isn't it? Thank
I'm
you.
thinking.
Me to myself.
I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna restrain myself from my own self-reflective rabbit hole here. So,
Okay.
um, I would love to put a pin in that because we might come back to that idea.
Okay.
But let's talk about tracking other people.
Okay.
So this is something when we were hanging out in person. It
Yeah.
was amazing how, let's see. I mean, the way that we didn't really know each other that well, but like the way that you could see me tracking other people and call
Yeah.
it out in the moment was hilarious and exposing for me.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
and um, what I mean by tracking is just, and this is a social dominant thing, but it's like a double whammy with social dominant and 3 core.
Right. Right.
It's like tracking sort of where other people are at. And what I mean by ats are like how everyone is generally feeling with respect to each other, with respect to me, what the vibe is, how I'm fitting into the vibe. And there's this, I'm speaking my experience of it, and I'm curious how yours either relates or contrasts to it. But it's like there's a way that I am always being aware of the vibe and
Right.
and of my impact on it and of people's responses to each other and to me. And is that an experience that you have as a like very often salient part of your consciousness?
Hmm. How would I frame that for myself? So I feel like vibe is almost like not quite vibe is like in objective personality, I'm a thinker. So in a sense, I'm missing the vibe in a lot of ways and I'm disrupting it, which I think relates to my reactivity. Um, but what I
Interesting.
am still is I'm still an EJ, which means that I am tracking other people compulsively. And I think actually um yeah, so I can build on what was interesting about the tracking is then there was at one point where you said, "Oh, that's your 6. You're going into 6." And I was like, "See, you do it too." Like there is a
Mm-hmm.
sense of like I'm watching you, but I'm watching you and I'm pointing you out because I'm like, "Hey, hey, look at you watching people. You don't have to watch so much." But the irony is, I have to be watching you to know that you're doing that. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't have to be watching so much either. I can mind my own damn business. No, no, because then there's also I will completely admit to this. There's also the like mental brownie points. See, I noticed our type happening. Look, I noticed our type happening. Look, I saw it. Look, I saw
Mm-hmm.
it. Where's the like? And there's a bit of 6 in there. Where's the teacher? Do I get points now? Look at me, I'm so good. Look at me, I'm so smart. Look at that. I really understand this because I can see our patterns. And it's like, okay, you
Yeah.
can see shit. Are you doing anything about it? It's like, I'm
Interesting.
trying. And that's a
Well,
lot more humbling, I feel. So there's definitely some
yeah.
ego boosting that happens. And then there's some self humbling that must occur and does not happen as often as it should. So,
Partly, okay, just one thing to just say out loud is when you speak, something I notice about you is that this is part of the 6 thing is it's like there's the the thing that you notice, and then there's the counter reaction internally, and it's like there's an
Yep.
inner ping pong ball that's going on, and that's
Yep.
like in that state. Just to what I mean in that statement, there was the point you make about there's the ego boost of noticing and saying it, and then immediately without prompting, there's the and what am I fucking doing about it kind of thing, which is
Right.
kind of a
Yeah.
super ego hit,
Yep.
internally. And so anyway, that was just interesting to me to point that
Yeah,
out.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
that dance, David talks about the horizon line of the Enneagram to 3 and 6. So
Mm-hmm.
so for anyone watching, just picture the visual of the Enneagram and then that line between 3 and 6. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that line dancing back and forth is literally like there's me and there's everyone else, and there's me and there's everyone, there's me and there's everyone, there's me and there's everyone, and it's like that flying back and forth is then amplified by social because me and everyone is suddenly characters that are hyper important and I will die if anything goes wrong there. And so that 3-6 stem plus social is really amplifying that flipping of if I say something and you notice it and what if it's not completely correct, I better catch it because I'll look bad. And so there's still that image at the end of the day. The big fear is, will I look bad? Will I be shameful? Will I be disgusting? There's still that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still, I'm using the super ego to keep that image safe. I'm protecting I'll hurt me before you hurt me. You can't touch me. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also 8 of
Yeah.
my autonomy will not be infringed because I'll hurt myself before you ever touch me. And that way I remain untouchable, which is still 3.
Yeah.
Untouchable, clean, controlled.
I like the word
Because I did
untouchable.
all the
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing too I want to pull out, and this is um depending on how deep you are into the Enneagram, this might be splitting a hair, but this is
Okay.
so the way that I use the word vibe, it
Okay.
strikes me as 9ish, and the way that you
Yeah.
said basically you're not really tuning into that, or you have you're almost
Nope.
vibe blind,
Yes. Yeah.
that feels kind of 8ish. It's like when I say vibe, it is a somatic sensing of the
Yeah.
room,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's like it's a way that I'm not able to not be infused by the vibe, whatever that is. It's like, here's a way to put it. It's like I am I enter a room or I exist in a group as a cup of water that is infused by the tea bag of the group. You know what I'm saying? It's like I take on I'm
Are you saying
since
are you getting teabagged by everyone? That's the phrase you want to
that's right.
use? You sure?
I'm
There's a
I'm
6.
sticking
I'm
with
like,
it.
are you sure? Are you sure? It's like that
Yeah,
could be messy. That could be messy.
yeah, I'm a 3 and I'm standing by it. I'm being teabagged by the group. Yeah.
You're being
No.
teabagged right now.
Yeah. Um I mean, in a
Oh man.
sense, I mean what I'm really pointing to is like an inability not to be infused.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like or here's another way to put it. It's like I show up as a sponge whose pores
Yeah.
can't be closed, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the social tide is moving through me in a way that is I can sense it from the inside. But with an 8 fix,
Yeah.
those pores don't really exist as much. They're
I've cut
solid
them
and
off.
closed. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
I've cut
And
them off.
so
Yeah.
you show up more as a solidity, and you exist in a group as that solidity, and so you're bringing your own vibe. But
Oh
so
my god.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah. And so one thing that is interesting to bring up too from our very first conversation is how you say that you show up even in our conversation where we first met. There was the fireworks display of your words,
Right.
and then you stopped, and then you watched yourself watch me and my response to
Yep.
you. It was like you showed up and you were speaking, and while you were speaking, you were not necessarily tracking me or sensing me, but as soon as you stopped,
It
the
turns
the
on.
it turns on. What
Yep.
so what turns on? That's the question.
Okay. That's a really good question. So I through all of that, I was really processing like the difference between somatic tracking and what I'm often tracking is I will remember everything that somebody said. I'll remember how like they looked at each other in that sense, but I don't feel it. It's like I can see pictures of what that looks like and
Mm-hmm.
how the dynamics therefore exist. So it's much more like It's less about the body experience of you, and it's much more about, well, what did he say and how did he say it, and all of that kind of like more anxious fluttering, right?
Hmm.
And that much more anxious fluttering require like to track that instead of the body. Your a mind has to be it has to be a live wire and exposed, like a raw nerve has to be exposed to everything coming in because it's a lot of information. Yeah, so that lightning live wire of the six really, and the raw nerve exposure of everything, I feel like it really it like really amps me up in a way, so that way the way that I can do tracking has to be through that. I have to use it. That's the way that I'm using my 3 and 6, is just all through the what I'm seeing and then what everyone's saying, because I've cut off the part of me that's exposed to the world, because that's what it's doing, is it's rejecting part of itself in order to remain autonomous, in order to remain in movement and in action. It's cutting off the part that needs nurturing, so to risk being touched and to be nurtured is unacceptable. So I feel like it often relates to like the 3 6 stem of like, I'm either in the 6 or I'm in the 3, which is I'm either here seeing you, seeing me, seeing you, seeing me, seeing you in the back and forth of the mirroring, or
Hmm.
I am and all over the place and explosive, especially. I like that you use the word fireworks. Because I think a lot like the energy is very much like, let's put on a show, let's put on something to watch, and it still has that element of watching, but there is a like fireworks, you can't touch them, they're far away, they're going to burn you, like you don't want them touching you, and that like electric live wire energy is a lot. And so all of my mirroring, I think, especially and tracking of others, and rather than the vibe, is I'm tracking is what people are saying, what they're putting out there, what their fireworks show is. And so something that's really interesting is that I have been catching that people that have are 9 fixers, either 9 core or 9 above their 6, because there's a lot of people who are 3 6 9 in some order, direction, blah blah blah. Like if they have 9 before 6, I'm really like having to tune in way more, because they're not giving me a lot of heady stuff to track, a lot of 6 energy to track. But if you're a 6 first, or if you're like 9 6 3, I can get a lot out of the person. But that 9 3 by itself is like, I'm not giving you anything, you got to really accept me impressionistically and visually, I'm not gonna talk. And I was like, what the hell is going on here, this is weird. And so it's like I had to like really work to be like, okay, what's going on, like I'm making little movements, but it's like, what's going on here? I felt like, when you
So
watch
just
like a big
real
cat
quick, just to be
prowl.
clear,
Yeah.
you're talking about me, right? Like me
Yes.
with three
Yeah.
nine
And then also
first. Yeah, yeah.
nines in general, I feel like I have to do this more. I feel like I'm a big cat, and I there's like a fence between us, and I'm like just
Hmm.
prowling, and I'm just like, what are you doing? And
Hmm.
there's because for me, my goal is I want to I want to get a sense of you, and then I want to like get myself through the bars almost, and then like just that have it's like I want to get my claws into people and be like, and you will never forget that I exist. I'm going to make sure you know me. Like
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
there's some 8 in there of like, I'm gonna have the upper hand here. I will always have there's some of that, and that 3 8 stem is very much like that predator vibe of like, I'm just sitting here moving, waiting for an opening. I'm just waiting. And the 9 is like, there's not a lot going on here. It's not like, it's almost like if the predator's like waiting for movement to know where you're gonna go. I'm just waiting. It's like it's not moving.
Yeah,
What
it's more
what's
like
it doing?
this is really metaphorical, but it's almost like the nine is um not it's more like a lake. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you could come and swim over her if you want, but you're not gonna like get your claws. It's gonna you know
Right. Right.
claws are gonna pass through.
Right. But that's where the 3 is like, I'm like, oh, I see you. And that's where I think part of it is even catching everyone's type. It's like, I see you. I saw that. There was movement.
Mhm.
There's individual movement. You weren't the all encompassing universe. I got you. And there's like and now I'm not letting you go. And there's still a lot of like, it's like, I'm putting it in predatory terms, but that's what I do when I like people, is like,
Mhm.
I'm going to watch you like this, grab you and be like, and now I'm going to make sure that you like me. and that
Yeah.
you're never going to let me go either, because I don't want to be let go of. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of my gripping and clawing is to the sake of I want to be someone else to grip and claw me and hold back just as tight. It's like, yes, yummy. That's what I want.
Um, can you say? Can you talk about when you're whatever word you would use, if it's
Okay.
whether it's the prowling or if it's the fireworks or when you're speaking or you're in the mode of on, you know,
Yeah.
um, being on. Are you how aware are you of eyes on you? Or this is like one on one or in a group. I guess actually, let's focus this for a second. Let's just talk about the first conversation with you and me, or even maybe even
Yeah.
right now. Like, um, the sense of the gazes upon you as you're doing that versus when you're not doing that. I think that's. I mean, I'm really honing in specifically on this dynamic of you're presenting and you're speaking, and it's the gray show, and then
It really
as soon
is.
as you as soon as you stop, um, it's like the outflow stops and the inflow is available, and the
Hmm.
inflow is all like people's eyes on me and the quality of their gaze on me, and did I do well, or I don't, and I'm putting words in your mouth now, but like what is that like for you?
Yeah. I love the like the phrase "Did I do well?" God, that's a good one. Um, yeah, there is. So I remember in middle school, and this memory just came up to me unsummoned. Like it just so like I remember in middle school we had this thing where we were supposed to rewrite a song for a history project. Like you're supposed to rewrite it and frame it for the American Revolution, right? And so I rewrote Miley Cyrus's "The Climb" for the American Revolution, and I sang it in front of like you got extra points if you performed it for the project because there was other parts of the project, and that way you could get some points up on your grade for the song thing. And I did it, and then my teacher wanted me to perform into front of the entire 8th grade, and I did. And in that moment, as I'm getting up there, I'm singing no accompaniment. I have nothing with me. It's just me, literally. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Maximum 3, right? And it's
Yeah.
like I have the entire 8th grade watching me. That's like that was over 100 people, and I had never done anything like this before. And it was like, and I had, and I this happens to me. It's like I had to turn them off and just sing. And then like then I could turn it back on a little bit in. And I feel like that's often what I'm doing in a conversation is I'm taking what the person throws me, and it's like if I'm thinking about what you're going to see at the first moment, I have to turn it off because I have to get moving. But then once I'm in, and that's very 6-8 stem as well, 8, using the 8 to get me moving. And once I'm moving, then I can look and see, okay, is it working? Is it going well? Do I stop? Because there was a moment I sang the first verse and chorus, and they started applauding, but I was like, no, 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 no. If you're clapping, I'm going to keep going. So I sang the whole song. And yeah, that there's a I think of initial burst of it turning off, and then it comes back on after enough has gone back where I'm getting, usually especially if I'm starting to get verbal or physical feedback, like you're nodding, for example. I'm like, okay, this is landing, this is making sense, it's resonating, good, stuff like that. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I'm tracking after I've started talking. I think also I suspect, I don't know if this is true. It might be interesting to watch the recording back. That obviously my body language, like I shut down in a big way once I stopped talking. But also I suspect that when I start talking, I'm not looking at you, and that then once I've talked for a little bit, I'm coming back in, and I'm actually able to look at you and know that you're looking at me. But I have to start with, and I'm not being seen. I'm somewhere else, and I'm just moving verbally, obviously. But I suspect that would be a pattern. And now that I'm noticing that, I feel slightly embarrassed of like, oh, I've been seen. It was by me, but still someone noticed me. Damn it. Yeah. Fun stuff.
So where are you looking when you speak?
Um, okay, so I feel like this is like how I've been tapping into the gut center is like I went like when I say that image came up unbidden, like I mean like I felt it come up and then I saw it of me up on that stage. And I wasn't seeing me from the outside. I just remembered looking out into the crowd and seeing everybody, right? And that I feel like that feeling of like the rising up to move, like that reactivity is like I have to move. I think I kind of look a little bit forward and then something comes up and I can go. Um and that's in objective personality for anybody who cares, and if you don't care you should. um like that's blast. That is organizing information for others, and that invokes getting started, getting moving, activity. That is all blast. And so that, like, it's very obvious that that is the hallmark of my existence, is that. And yeah, I would agree with that. So
This is a riff I just want to go on for a second that
yes.
has been bubbling in me is so the heart sensor, as I think of it, is so much to do with the gaze, like how my gaze upon you and your gaze upon me, and the quality of that gaze, the congruence of that gaze, the are you seeing me? And when you look at me, what are you
Right.
seeing? And
Right.
when I look at myself, what am I seeing? All that
Right.
stuff, you know. And there's a way that if two people are in a conversation and they're really looking at each other, that is a level of heart intimacy connection that is often, well, depending on the quality of the gaze, but it's it's intense and it can be threatening, and there may actually even be a sexual blind thing going on here in the aversion of that gaze.
Right. Right.
um, but there's a sense, like, making and holding eye contact during a conversation is a it introduces an element of something, what is it, heart or intimacy or something like that, that carries with it a kind of like oh man, are we gonna like really be here together?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so as you were talking about, you know, in this conversation, not even necessarily, or like when you're speaking, not even necessarily looking at me, I actually experience that in my own way when I speak with people, is a kind of unconscious aversion of the gaze, or even if I am looking at them, there's something still protected in me. It's like I'm not fully opening the doors of my
Right.
heart or
Right.
myself, you know, um, unless for some reason the quality of that conversation or interaction or the space in that friendship is safe enough that I feel like okay, I can really show up. And then it's like all of a sudden I am behind my eyes, and and when I look at you, it sort of calls you into that, like you behind your eyes, and then all of a sudden
Mm.
here we are together. Um,
Yeah,
so
I love that. I love that. All
yeah,
of a sudden, here we are together, because, like, you have to be tuned into the heart space to even know what that means. Because two people could sit there, like, we're having a conversation. Of course, we're together, and it's like, yeah, but you're not really, not
right,
unless you're really there. Then it's like, oh, now we're here together. Now we're really here together. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm really glad you said that. Sorry, I just needed to point it out. It's so good.
yeah. So um, okay, that's cool that you resonate with this point,
Oh
and
yeah.
I bet that as a three, well, actually, let me ask it this way:
Okay.
how often do you get there with people?
uh very rarely. Very, very rarely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nowhere near as much as I'd like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, and
I
I don't
remember.
know. This is a
Oh,
yeah. You go. No, you go. Go ahead.
okay. There was something I had wanted to talk about, which is like the quality of, like, when you have, because we saw each other very recently, and like when you have two threes really looking at each other, and then kind of this, like, we're both social self pres, so we're both like putting our weapons down and being like, so are we going to socially judge each other right now? And it's like, no. Are you going to judge me? And like just letting the weapon go, and like,
Mm-hmm.
and that relaxation of like, that's, I remember that, and that being like so sincere. And that was rare. And then that wasn't just with you, that was like several people that I care for. And so then it was like, whoa, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot. Oh my God. Like, this is what social, like, in a sense, this is what social should be. This is what
Yeah,
it
this
should
this
be.
is right.
Mm. And it's
This
not.
is
It is so often not that. And it's, yeah, I grieve it. I've been grieving since. So I don't think I have that very often. If I have it very occasionally.
hmm. Yeah, it really strikes me that the heart center, if you think of body, heart, mind as like layers of experience, or like sort of dimensions of reality that you can tune into, the heart layer gets, I think, squeezed to a very thin slice between body and mind very often. And I think I'm also
Yeah.
speaking from the point of view of being a three, which is
Right.
an experiential reality where threes tend to inhabit body mind at the expense of heart.
Right.
And there is a way that any of the instincts approach from the place of presence in the heart is there's a kind of sacredness that emerges, like the
Mhm.
sacred social instinct, where
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're both here together.
Yeah.
And um or there's an analog to that in the sexual instinct and in the self-preservation instinct, I think. And I don't think that this conversation we're having right now is necessarily specific to threes. Like, oh, it's not. I'm not pointing out that threes don't get here very often with people. It's more
No,
like
people don't
people
do it
aren't
very
often.
often.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
But
And this is as a social three, speaking for myself, this is kind of what I'm wanting always.
yeah,
And
same. Same.
yeah, this is okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to this part of the conversation, because I think this is what social threeness really is wanting.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's like deep connectedness in this through the social lens in the heart space. And all the song and dance is, in a sense, a bid for this, but
Yeah.
very often it's not really landed. And partly it's because through the song and dance, we're not actually connected to it in ourselves.
Right. Right.
So,
And
yeah.
that's
Do you have
that's
words for
like
that?
yeah, yeah, that's been the thing. Like, one, I just caught both of our body languages. Like, as you're talking, where does my hand go? And then as you're talking, where's your hand going? Both of us are
Totally.
actually touching actually, as we're getting to something real for us, where do we go? Is instantly the heart, because that's
Right.
where we are um in this moment. So I wanted to point that out, because I think it's important for people to see that body language. Like, this is what it means. If you're really there, you'll know it, because you'll catch it if you're
Mm-hmm.
awake and here for it, So I wanted to start there. Social here. I want everyone involved. Come and
Mm-hmm.
join us. But no, I mean, the like that's why I brought up grief, because especially with wing 4 of, like, I'll get negative real quick with this, is like, if I see, I am constantly seeking for value, and I'm looking for what is considered valuable. But when I see that we're in a desert and there's no water in sight, and we're dying, there is a rage of, like, how did we let this world become so dry of the heart? How did we let this happen? And it's like, hmm, it's very moves me to great
Mm-hmm.
grief that the world is so dry of heart, because there's a sense that is felt, and not just emotionally but also in the body. Like, I have a very deep sense that this is just true and just real, of, like, it was never supposed to be this way, and how did we let this happen? And this, very much, this huge amount of, like, ocean of grief, like, bottomless. I don't think I'll probably adjust. I will probably adapt to sitting with this feeling, and become stronger at carrying it. But I don't think it's ever going to leave me. And I think that is what most people don't know, what they're missing. Most people don't have the language to know that they're not connected. Most people don't even have the feeling of being disconnected. They simply are. And that's even
Mm-hmm.
worse. Like at least, like, oh yeah, it gets me. It gets me on a ridiculous level to know that this is what connection should be. That, and because I even think of the language I'm using is in a sense of like the social self-pressed desert. It's when we have no sexual oasis. There's no water. We're dried out and we're dying. And to me, that's what it feels like the is also happening in the heart space is something very similar. It's like we're in the 6-9 endless, like, because the majority of people are either sixes or nines, and a huge amount of that those people are Bermudas, like for context. But like, yeah, I feel like we're just lost in that like space, and we're not feeling. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it's yeah, it's huge. It's huge. It's everything to me. It's
Mm,
everything to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
How much is this? I mean, tuning into it right this moment, the unconscious underpinning of the devotion you have to personality itself or your YouTube channel and things like that.
Um, I think this is a larger tapestry that I was chewing
Mm-hmm.
at one corner of. I was chewing at personality as a
Mm-hmm.
corner of trying to knowing that people were missing something, including myself. And then this is giving me one, not just language, but actual experience of what is being missed, which is true, real, raw, unfiltered connection. And then to have to see what it's like to, because I go back to work and I'm realizing that like no one's seeing each other. No
Mm-hmm.
one. I just spent like there was a huge amount of time just being seen. And I think that it's just that sense of oh no, and that is like that's how I felt every time I got into personalities. Like they don't know their personality. Oh no, but like this is a much bigger no. This is a
Mm-hmm.
much bigger no. This is like the epitome of all no's. Like I was like, oh no, like um that's why I say it's like I'm never recovering. It's like this was the biggest no, and reactions like this is not like this is a huge sense of this is not what the world should be like, but
Mm-hmm.
it is, and that just
Mm-hmm.
endless disappointment. There's just
Yeah.
endless disappointment from here on out, which is great. I'm gonna be great. It's great. It's I make being in the heart space sound so depressing. Like you have to understand to anyone listening, you have to understand the depth of beauty that must be there in order to be this disappointed. Like you're seeing all the negative that's coming after. Like you have to imagine that it's equal an opposite reaction. Like this,
Mm-hmm.
like that is
This
like
is
it's hard to share the equal and opposite reaction without being in it in that moment, and you had to be there.
yeah.
So
This is the four, and I'll put it in some
oh yeah,
explicit terms. This is what it means: frustration in the heart space.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
endless
like we talk.
disappointment.
Yeah. And I guess I feel a resonance with what you're saying. And I want to, um, you know, language is inadequate to describe this stuff, and it's the nature of language. Language is all we have to create
Yeah,
shared mind around
that
around the
damn
stuff.
headspace, that fucking headspace, useless
Um,
shit.
well, what I just want to kind of put an exclamation point by what you're saying in a teaching way, because the this what frustration really is the letting down of some ideal
Yeah,
that is felt that there's a felt sense of that ideal that's being disappointed, and
yeah,
this quality of depth and connection is particularly through the social lens experienced through the four. um
right.
yeah, so that's, well, I just wanted to say that. So
Yes,
um okay, I'm gonna reroute this conversation to a slightly different topic. um
absolutely. Go for it.
okay,
I'm excited.
so one thing that you said that you wanted to touch on in this conversation was, and I quote, the role and purpose of three.
Yes.
And we talked maybe a little bit about this other piece, but how 3-on-3 communication is unique. We kind
Yeah.
of have been there, but I wonder if there's something else that comes up for you when I prompt you with those words
Yeah.
of yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in particular the so we're kind of having a 3-on-3 conversation. So and from an educational standpoint, like if you're watching, you can kind of see how there's a almost a pause in the way that we're communicating, and there's a kind, for me there's an undercurrent of like, do you see this? And then I can kind of feel, it's like, oh, he saw it, okay. And then I feel like I'm trying to give you, it's like, I see you, like and there's kind of a silent exchange that you have, in my opinion, you have to be tapped into the heart to feel that silent secondary language occurring.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's pre-verbal.
it's,
Yeah.
yes, it's, yeah. And it's I actually want to bring up the object relations of the three. The wound that happens for the three is sooner than it happens for the 6 and the 9. It happens when, allegedly when the child's an infant and it looks to its mother and it doesn't feel seen. That's early. And so that's, I think, where the pre-verbal part comes from. Is the 6 is having it in more of the almost like a toddler phase, when they're more ambulatory, when they're more heady, when they're talkative, when they're communicating and they're seeking support and they're not getting it. For us, our wound is at the pre-verbal, and so our language is additionally at the pre-verbal, which is not dissimilar to the 9, but the 9 still experiences it differently because it's not in the heart space, it's through the body and through autonomy. So I wanted to kind of like really highlight that. I'm wiggling my fingers as if you guys can feel what I'm feeling and you can see what I'm feeling, but it's like there is a sense of like communication that's just soaring underneath that, hopefully that they can, maybe if they review and they watch it again, that they can see it and be like, oh, this is what they're talking about, like there's something passing in between, like ships in the night. um but I think that's the role of 3, is in many ways to be able to see those signals, and then especially for me being heady, to put words to it and to say, this is you. You were giving you, because everyone's giving off those signals all of the time, all the time. And so I ended up doing this exercise for my friends where I made them a bunch of collages spontaneously, and I just asked them, hey, send me a picture of you and I'll give you a collage. And I'm just taking everything that they are, that I'm picking up in that pre-verbal way, and I'm handing it to them visually and saying, this is you. And
Mm-hmm.
over and over, it would, like, and I would write a couple sentences with it. And they were like, wow, I feel seen. Over and over that phrase, I feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
I feel seen, I feel seen. And it's like, well, yeah, because I'm seeing you. And then the kind tying into that great grief is like, oh, I didn't do this with a desire if someone would make me one, because I made my own and I looked great. But then I was like, oh, but there's very few people in my life who could give this back to me. And there was a grief
Mm-hmm.
there of like, oh, even if I had wanted the exchange, I wasn't going to get it. And I was glad to volunteer it, but there was oh, this is something unique to what I'm doing that's in the heart space. There's a bit of sadness there. So I think the role of 3 is to take that pre-verbal, and then, especially because it's attachment and it's connecting to other people, to be able to hand it over and say, this is you. Here you are. And again, the heart space romanticizes things. So it's this is you and you're beautiful, or this is you and you're dazzling, and this is you and I can't wait to see who you're going to be when you grow up. Like that feeling, that vibe. I guess I do vibe. There it is.
Partly what I'm responding to in this is just connecting a dot from our previous, the last part of our conversation.
Yeah.
This sense of pre-verbal seeing, or what's happening under the words in 3-on-3 communication, or any, really, I think it's between any type, but there exists in any interaction the possibility of mutual seeing or not mutual seeing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that this is, in a sense, the gift, or the you could say the purpose of 3 is to bring this out. And I think that a lot of times the 3 gets stereotyped, understandably so, as radiance, glory, magnificence, big, bright, shiny kind of energy. And that is certainly one manifestation of it, but it starts, I think, at the level of the glow of some very precious ember of personhood, of you, of like the smiling infant, which isn't which isn't fireworks and theater and display. It's just
Right.
preciousness itself. And
Oh no.
you know, your like this collage thing that you're making, or like the sentences that you say to people when people feel seen. It's you just with your eyes, putting your eyes on that, you know. Um, and anyway, yeah. So I find that very beautiful, and I have one, and we might come to a close here in a second, but this is one question for you is around
Mm-hmm.
that is I can sense in you and I resonate in me just how important that is. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what life is for me, or what I hope for it to be, or those moments where I get to really taste that and experience it
Yeah.
and be saturated by it are so important. And there is also I have the forewing of being disappointed by that not being my ever present reality. um, and I also have often in just going out into the world a kind of resistance to going there with people. A resistance for it's like as much as I want it, I sometimes don't give myself permission to like go there with someone, or to like penetrate through whatever layer of film is on a person to like see their heart, because I know that doing that is intense. It's also not necessarily in a given moment socially appropriate. It's also it opens up something very raw and sweet and vulnerable, but it's just kind of like it's a decision in a sense to go there, you know, and it's like I have to kind of summon myself to do it. And um yeah, so
Is
I
it?
guess you get what I'm saying, what I'm reaching for in this
Yeah.
part of the conversation is
Is
like
it?
why
Is
don't
it?
what yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Is it? Because this is how I feel. Like, is it that you're afraid of? Because like you have to make like you're picking up the signals and maybe you can go there, but there's still the leap of if I let it down, are they going to be there with me? Because that would hurt. That hurts so much more when I'm like, okay, I'm ready, I'm here, like I'm me, and then they're
Yeah,
like, that's not okay, and I'm like,
that's a
oh,
huge one.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a
that's
huge
that's for
deal.
me. It's like I I I want like in a sense, like I want to keep my clothes on. You know, I don't want them to see me. Like I don't want to be exposed. And so
Hmm.
there's a huge amount of like um huge amount of just energy put into reading. Can I go there? Can we go there? Are we
Hmm.
doing this? Is this real? And
Hmm.
that I think if there is something to know like about threes, like the reason we're watching isn't because we're constantly trying to um control other people, or like there's a like you know, obviously the behavior can turn to self-absorbed narcissism, or it can turn to like, you know, controlling and manipulating people. But it's important to understand the motivation from the point of that infant. And I'm glad, like I'm so glad I brought that up and that you reinforced it, because like if you see the three as, I just want to be seen and I just want you to see me, and I am terrified of the rejection that might occur, or the not being seen that might, for me it's rejection, but like the not being seen that might occur, it's like
Hmm.
don't do that. If you got a three who's actually handing themselves over to you a little bit, like try to be open to them to the best of your ability, because that's the wound that is like we are playing that out over and over again because we keep being closed off and keep ourselves from being known. It is partially our fault, but I think many people, because they're not in touch with the heart space, even when I am like, okay, I'm putting down the barriers and you're seeing me, if they're not there with me there, it's like ow, this was the exact thing I was afraid of. This is why
Hmm.
I don't do it. So
Right.
I'm guessing from you nodding that that's where you're at as well, as like, this is why. It's because you weren't going to be there with me, so I wasn't going to show you me in the first place.
I don't think I could have said it better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a
Um,
really, like, you know what? I hope here's you know I hope for this interview. I hope people cry. I'm laughing at people's tears, but like Like this is the like I've teared up. Like that's the point. You want to be in the heart center, you got to bleed for it, you know? Like I hope you all bleed and I hope you love bleeding.
um,
The violence of 8. The violence of the 8 picks.
one just one more piece on this that I want to
Yeah,
say is that a lot of times it's people try to express. Actually, man, there's so much to say about this, and I don't
I
want to
know.
overdo it. But um, so one thing that I'm tuning into is that a lot of times when people try to do heart, it comes in a kind of overly structured or verbal way where we set up these like social rules of engagement, um, and and I state what I'm seeing in you in a kind of formal, like, I see your preciousness and here's what I see kind of way. And because it's at the level of words, um, and isn't
Yeah.
really dropped into the heart, like you can feel a lack of resonance there, right? There's not quite the congruence. And so this is, I point that out because, this idea of the heart being a pre-verbal sensing of
Right.
like how present are you in the heart as you're seeing me in my heart, and is there actually a heart to heart connection here? That's actually what the yearning is for.
Right.
And there's a very, very subtle um sensitivity to that is uh it's just not, it's qualitatively different from the way that the body and the mind are sensing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um and I think this also speaks to the something that I feel is also very misunderstood about threes, is just how much psychological safety is required for them as a precondition to showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um a lot of people see threes out there like crushing goals and being whatever, uh
And so polished. I see
high
them
performers and
polished.
polished and stuff. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And this this sense of like like even in my body language and the way that I'm sensing for these words right now, and in yours, it feels like we're um this is another one of those like words are inadequate thing, but it feels like our entire energy shifts um to pay reverence or homage to this thing that is so precious.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's that came up earlier of like
yeah,
serving the
that's right.
Enneagram or serving art is
Yes.
like we're not. Yeah. Yep. Just
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Um, and I think that part of the growth for three is, this is to your point about the purpose of three. Um, and I say this as much as a statement for myself in terms of my own growth edge, but the point is, I think for threes to start getting comfortable enough with this being a gift, and a thing that they can bring, so that they don't need as much psychological safety as a precondition before they start bringing this into the world, into their conversations, into whatever. Um, that's part of the. This is part of like the super subtle under the hood, way under the hood type structure of three, and the growth is uh in a sense, I think threes are waiting in a to be safe enough to show themselves.
Yeah.
And the first few times you show yourself, like the very first Enneagram class I ever took was that space of safety for me, and it was the first time I ever revealed certain things about myself to another group of human beings. Um, and over time, I've started like the muscle of exposing myself before people provide that psychological safety is something that has shown up for me more. And that's why I think the virtue of the three is authenticity. It's this sense of being willing to expose myself, um, as a way of bringing about that psychological safety rather than
Right.
needing it first. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
um,
I think that's
yeah.
something
Go ahead.
that uh I consider myself to be blessed with the reactivity because I can kind of get raw really quick. And I think that helps me not hide a little bit. Like, it just helps a little bit, and it helps me get started because I can at least get angry um in a public kind of way, and then usually under anger there's something else, so then afterwards I can kind of like get like I can use the attachment to disconnect. I can use that 6 of like, let's fight about it, okay, now let's get naked, like there's another word for it, like they're like, let's get emotionally naked. So but I think it's great how, like, I feel like you're really open. My impression of you is very open. Obviously, words do not properly define this, but I think that, um, like, I feel like when I use my reactivity, but I feel like I also have like an earnestness. Um, I think the word you would use was like innocence. It's like there's an earnestness of like, I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna like let myself be that little kid hoping to be
Yeah.
seen. And
Right.
like I really try to like let that like the inner child, fuck, I hate that phrase, but like that's what it is
Mm-hmm.
like letting that out a little bit and risking the initial miss to happen again. Letting that be risked is, I think the thing that all the types have to do, but um I know mine very well because it's terrifying. It's the one that scares me the most. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um, I just have to say, um, I'm such a fan of you, and it's been so fun
Aw.
to talk to you. Yeah,
I would hug you if I could right now.
I feel that. Yeah, I feel a
Oh,
lot of heart energy flowing in this conversation. The wiggles.
the wiggles. Always the wiggles. I'm a wiggler. It is known.
So,
So,
um, what's this been like for you?
being interviewed, being
Mm-hmm.
alive, trying to make jokes to keep you from killing your computer. Which of the above?
Mm-hmm.
All of the above?
Just this experience of being interviewed. Yeah.
Okay. Being interviewed. I actually love being interviewed because I often feel like that attachment channeling thing is
Mm-hmm.
most powerful in me when I'm interviewed. I feel like I can really tap into myself um, in a really powerful way when I'm being interviewed because I struggle to, I even talk to myself when I'm alone to help my kind of interviewing myself to help get a sense of that as well. So I love being interviewed, and I think this is probably my best interview yet. I think I've been very real this interview, and that's like the goal. That's always the goal for me, is like how real, how many clothes can I take off? Or playing strip interview. How real can I get? You know?
uh,
Like, yeah, really trying to risk it. It's scary. It's
mm.
terrifying. But you've been a lovely buddy as we just sit here and try to throw off clothes. Be like, how real are we? Who knows?
um, yeah, I'm just sitting with something here that's not really, again, well, one thing I love is our theme about words are inadequate for this, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there's almost a sense of like, to truly honor the heart space, or like this sense of having landed here together,
Mhm.
almost requires silence. It's like words just, they're not an adequate vehicle to
Yeah.
express what this is, you know. Um, so
The
yeah, I'm just
body
sitting with
does
that.
the
Yeah.
body does better. Like the this, it's
Mm-hmm.
like that's close to an image of like, or like when I'm doing this, I'm like trying to give people an image with my movements.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, see this and then therefore know it for what it is. Because I
Yeah.
cannot words it. Like, the headspace is great. I love the headspace. I'm in it all the time. I use it for humor, quite effectively, if I do say so. But the it is a sometimes it can be a bit of it clarifies things, but there are some things there are too many things relegated to the headspace that sometimes should be put to the gut, or like to the body, to the heart. um yeah. And I
Yeah.
think this is honest, real connection is one of those areas, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again for doing this. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah. And just, okay, so everyone knows, people can find you at Augmented Personality YouTube channel.
Correct. Yes.
And yeah, I just really appreciate you and being in this heart space with you. And
Yay.
thanks again for this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.